Hi, this is Donovan Ackley, and I'm responding to our readings and videos in week 3 of the Intersectional Diversity class at the University of Redlands in the LGBTQ certificate form. Now, you're hearing my roommates in the background. I want to address the concerns raised about instructors being out of touch with your realities as LGBTQ leaders who are very young. Notice I am renting a room. I'm going to just pan around. So this is my work-live space. It used to be a weight room in the house of the people I'm renting from. So I've lived here about 3.5 years, and yeah, I have a PhD in religion and philosophy, and I used to be a college professor full-time. I was even a department chair. But when I came out as trans and gay, because I have an intersex condition and I can't take the female hormones anymore that I used to take to live as a female. My body just won't accept them. I get very sick, and I almost died from that in 2012. Anyway, but I still love guys, and when I do love someone. But anyways, long story short, came out as trans, came out as gay in 2013, and was asked to leave the place where I had taught for many years as a full-time professor, and was a department chair over there. And I've been doing work with other people who have experienced religious trauma as LGBTQI folks. So anyway, that's what I've been doing, and this is the way I live. And I'm not in a university classroom, and I don't have my own office. And I'm streaming live from the room that I rent, where I do my work for this course. Other than that, in the daytime, my day job is I do work full-time now. It's been very hard as a trans person to find full-time work, but I do work full-time now. I'm a recovering alcoholic addict myself. I used to use in order to stay in the closet, and I've been clean almost 7 years now. So I work in the field of addiction recovery, gender-responsive work. I work with women, some of whom are trans, women and their children. The women that I work with in a county-funded program are people who are recovering from substance use and from alcohol use. Well, substance use, yeah, and usually have co-occurring mental illness diagnoses, and usually coming off of the street, often having been living outdoors. Possibly some in their cars. Most of the people I work with don't have access to a car anymore. They've been living in rough conditions for a really long time. Anyway, my point in bringing all up is the stuff that we're talking about in the class, the things that you're reading, the things that we're looking at in the videos. My life approaches those issues in not just academic ways. I'm definitely intersecting with folks. For example, I wanted to say this last week, but the issue of who gets to vote. I don't know. We haven't really talked about this, but we just got to watch this interview with Mayor Pro Tem Denise Davis, right? So we're going to talk about politics for a minute, but who gets to vote? Who gets disenfranchised? You know, when you're working with people who are discriminated against on the basis of race, gender, ability, people with mental health diagnoses are discriminated against. People with addictions, medically diagnosed addictions, they're discriminated against. And when when they've been living outdoors, when they're people who live in a way that's described as homeless, right? It is, they're in precarious situations, they're unemployed. Those people, folks who are dealing with those issues are discriminated against in lots of different ways. But what's interesting, going back to the race discussion, is that the way that the laws about possession of substances, dealing, so people that are unemployed and women, are discriminated against in the job market. LGBTQ people that we talked about, we read about, discriminated against race on the basis of race. There's employment discrimination. So anyway, a lot of the folks I work with have worked in the underground economy, and that might include dealing in substances. That may include sex work. That's normal. The people I spend most of my days with, that's having a background in that recently, or even still doing that, is something that's normal amongst the people I spend most of my time with. And so, of course, those activities are illegal, right? But who gets arrested for doing those things, and who, even more than that, who gets convicted, and how much time do they spend? Do they spend it in a county jail, or do they go to the state prison? That's a sentencing choice. I got to tell you, on the ground, sentencing, it's not equal. Drug addiction affects everybody equally. It does no respecter of race or class or gender or sexual orientation. However, the people that get convicted and then as felons no longer have a right to vote, something that comes up a lot. My job and with the people I work is I do intake, and we, as a county program, we offer them the right to register to vote. Most people to whom I offer the right to register to vote every day, which is legally required to offer them that, most of them are not allowed to vote. They legally cannot register to vote. And I see this over and over and over again every day. And it's, you've been reading about it and hearing about it, but it's women that are disenfranchised. And I think back to like 1919 and what women went through to get the right to vote in the first place. I think about that with all these disenfranchised women and women of color, women who have serious mental health issues, but they're not untreatable. It doesn't mean they shouldn't be allowed to vote. Just because you've experienced drug use at some time or had a diagnosis of depression or anxiety, particularly since most of the folks I work with are trauma survivors. Most of them, they may have these mental health diagnoses and substance issues because they were raped as children and they're domestic violence survivors. And when you hear their stories, you can kind of understand why they're coping in the ways that they are. And there is hope for recovery for them. I see people recover, but they still have this criminal record, and they still will never be able to vote. So maybe that seems like it's digressing from what you read, but there's a bit of softness in these conversations, videos, and readings. I'm not sure you're getting to the heart of the nitty gritty of what intersectionality looks like for the people who experience it. And since this is what I am experiencing every day, it's been very much on my mind. There's a pretty big disconnect between the readings and the work we do in this class and what I actually experience with people who are living at these intersections on a daily basis. So how racism and how racism and sexism intersect, right? That was the question for our discussions this week. That's some things I'm thinking about. I'm sure you have your own thoughts that I'll be looking forward to hearing about in your videos. I know I promised I wasn't going to go on so long, but I'm not seeing this perspective working its way into our readings and videos otherwise. So I have to, this time I'm sharing a little longer, but I will try to be mindful of holding space for everybody else to share and not taking up more room than I need to in our discussions. I look forward to hearing what you all have to share, and we'll talk later. Bye.